You sit before me not because you are broken, but because you are asking to understand why the same fire keeps returning to consume you. And so I must begin by saying what few dare to. Addiction is not your enemy. It is your messenger. It is not here to ruin your life, though it may do so if ignored. It has come to deliver something from the depths of your unconscious that your conscious mind has not yet dared to face. You see, the psyche is not a machine that malfunctions. It is a living system, and when it suffers, it does not do so at random. The addict, whether addicted to alcohol, heroin, sex, perfection, or even power, is not simply indulging in a destructive habit. He is attempting, often blindly, to solve a problem of the soul. Let us speak clearly. Addiction is not weakness. It is a misdirected search for wholeness, for something sacred, something eternal, something lost. I have observed this in countless patients. They come to me in torment, consumed by compulsions they neither understand nor can control, and society tells them to just stop. What absurdity! They might as well be told to just fly. The compulsion is not a choice, it is a symptom of a deeper imbalance, a split within the self. What lies beneath addiction is the shadow, that part of you which has been exiled, that part which is unacceptable to the ego, which you have learned to suppress in order to survive. But the shadow does not die. It waits, and it speaks in dreams, in behaviors, in suffering. When you drink or inject or obsess, you are not simply running from pain. You are being pulled by something ancient, something unresolved. Some part of you has been starved, and it is now devouring whatever it can find. But the truth is this: you are not addicted to the substance, you are addicted to the feeling it gives you, or rather, to the part of yourself it helps you silence. The alcoholic does not crave the drink. He craves the forgetting, the silence of guilt, the stilling of the inner critic, the release from the unbearable weight of being oneself. Do you see? The behavior is only the surface. Beneath it lies a sacred question: what in you is crying to be seen? I have said before, and I will say again, every addiction is an unconscious attempt at initiation. The addict is trying to undergo transformation, but without guidance, without ritual, and without meaning. And so the journey becomes destructive. They drink not simply to escape, but to transcend, to touch the eternal, however falsely, to dissolve the ego's suffering in some imagined oblivion. This is why I once told a colleague, you are trying to cure the spiritual thirst of man with methods that remove his only access to the divine. You laugh, but listen. The Latin word for alcohol is spiritus, the same word for spirit, the same word used in sacred rituals as in bottles of poison. There is no accident in this. The alcoholic is reaching for spirit, for the divine, without knowing it. That is why you cannot truly heal addiction by removing the substance alone. You must replace the counterfeit ritual with a true one. You must offer the soul something real, something meaningful, something holy. I do not speak of church doctrine. I speak of the individuation process, the deep inner journey by which a person becomes whole. You must descend into your own darkness, meet your own demons, and retrieve what has been lost. Addiction is a failure of integration. It is a symptom of the psyche's cry for unity. The ego and the unconscious are at war. The conscious mind tries to maintain control, to suppress, to rationalize, but the unconscious will not be denied. It will erupt in dreams, in symptoms, in behaviors, and sometimes in addiction. The addict is often one with a powerful, unconscious someone, with enormous energy buried within. But that energy has not been welcomed, it has not been accepted, it has been shamed, feared, and rejected. And so it turns against them. You cannot fight the shadow with suppression. You must dialogue with it. You must invite it in, and you must learn what it needs, what it fears, what it knows. There is a myth that healing is about becoming better. Healing is about becoming whole. That is a very different thing. Wholeness includes what was broken, what was hidden, what was denied. And so I tell you, when a man tells me he cannot stop drinking, I do not ask, why are you so weak? I ask, what power is this drink giving you? What part of you is so deeply unmet that only oblivion feels safe? This is the truth few wish to face. Addiction is not random. It is not meaningless. It is not merely chemical. It is a map. The symptom shows you the place of the wound. The wound shows you the place of the story. And the story shows you the soul's unfinished task. You see, the unconscious is not merely personal. It is archetypal. It is vast. Within you are myths older than language patterns of exile, return, fall, and resurrection. The addict is living out a mythical narrative without knowing it. They are lost in the underworld, seeking light, and they cannot escape until they know the name of the God who has taken them there. In ancient times, a person who behaved like the addict would be brought to the priest, the shaman, the ritual. Today they are brought to jail, or worse, left alone with their shame. This is a tragedy, because addiction is a spiritual crisis. It is the soul's way of saying, I need help, and the ego's way of saying, I don't want to feel this pain. But someone must listen. Someone must answer. There is no healing without truth. And the truth, dear friends, is this. You will never overcome your addiction until you face what it protects you from. You must go into that pain. You must grieve what was lost. You must stand before your own abyss, not to fall in, but to understand what calls from its depths. The paradox is this. What you fear in yourself is often the source of your freedom. The part you have rejected, the wound you carry, may be the very place where your soul will blossom if given the chance. You cannot silence the unconscious. You can only listen to it and allow its messages to be heard. Addiction is one such message, and once heard, it changes. But not before. You must understand that the psyche is always trying to heal itself. Even when it appears destructive, even when it seems to move toward ruin, there is in it a striving toward wholeness. But the route it chooses when denied awareness becomes dark, distorted, and dangerous. Addiction is the shadow's ritual, a corrupted rite of passage, enacted in isolation, without witness, without consciousness, and without meaning. You see, in ancient cultures, young men and women were led through initiation. They faced death, symbols of darkness, trials that shattered the ego. They were broken open not to be destroyed, but to be reassembled into someone larger than the sum of their wounds. But today, the modern person has no such guidance. He faces the suffering of life, and he finds no symbol, no story, no structure. So the psyche constructs its own initiation, but it does so blindly. The addict then becomes a self-initiate without a guide. And that is the most dangerous path of all. So what is to be done? You must become your own guide or find one who knows the way. You must walk down into your dreams. Yes, your dreams, for they are the royal road to the unconscious. The dreams do not lie. They show you in symbol what the conscious mind refuses to see. And when addiction arises in the dream, perhaps as a devouring animal, a bottomless well, a stranger offering poison, this is not madness. This is the soul speaking in the only language it has left. A man once came to me who could not stop gambling. He had lost his family, his home, nearly his life. But in his dreams, he saw himself again and again at a table, cards in hand, money disappearing, always alone. And behind him, always behind him, stood his father, silent, watching. We worked not on his behavior, but on his dream. And what he discovered was this. He was not gambling for wealth. He was gambling for approval, for love, for a voice from the past that never came. And the casino had become his temple, his altar, a place where he hoped unconsciously to finally be chosen. Do you understand? Addiction is symbolic. It is not about the thing itself. It is about what the thing means. Until you understand the symbol, you cannot dissolve the behavior. You may remove it temporarily, but another will rise in its place, because the psyche will not rest until its wound is witnessed. I must say it again. The wound must be witnessed, not judged, not shamed, not analyzed into oblivion, but seen. When you bring light into a room that has long been dark, the shadows do not vanish all at once. They recoil, they resist, but eventually, with enough patience, they are integrated. And so too with the shadow within. You do not conquer your addiction by force. You integrate the part of yourself that was using it to survive. Yes, survive. Because the ego is a clever architect. When the soul cannot bear the weight of what it has endured, it builds defenses. And sometimes those defenses are behavioral, compulsive, addictive, but always they are designed to protect something innocent inside of you. Let me ask you plainly, who in you is using the addiction to survive? Is it the child, the orphaned emotion, the rage no one let you speak, the grief no one helped you carry? Who is crying beneath the behavior? When you can answer that question, you begin the true journey. Now, you may ask, what happens if I stop? If I remove the substance, the behavior, what fills the void? And this, my friends, is the most terrifying part. The void, the silence, the place where the pain rushes back. But I tell you, do not be afraid of the void. It is not the enemy, it is the womb. The same place where all transformation begins. The void is where the ego dissolves, where the old identity, the one built around pain, avoidance, numbing, falls away. And in that silence, the self begins to emerge. Now, do not mistake the ego for the self. They are not the same. The ego is who you think you are. The self is who you are, whole, timeless, vast. The ego fears change. The self demands it. The ego clings to the addiction. The self uses even the addiction as a doorway to awakening. I have seen this many times. A patient comes, weary, lost, ashamed, and yet within them burns a quiet ember. A whisper from the self saying, there is more for you than this. That is what brings them to me, not their suffering, but their hope. Hope is not naive. It is archetypal. It is part of the soul's wisdom, the knowing that no matter how dark the night, there is a dawn hidden within it. But the dawn cannot come unless you face the night. Not bypass it, not medicate it, not outthink it, face it. This is what the addict must do. Not merely abstain, but descend. Not suppress, but inquire. Not run, but listen. Listen to what? To the voice within. The one that has been silenced by shame. The one that remembers who you were before the wound. The one that still believes you are worthy of healing. You may think this is too poetic, but let me tell you, the psyche speaks in poetry. It speaks in symbol, myth, dream, metaphor. That is its language. And if you do not learn it, you will never understand what your suffering is trying to say. So let me speak plainly, as if you were sitting in my consulting room. If you are addicted, I do not ask you what you are doing. I ask you, what pain are you avoiding? What truth are you afraid to know? What child within you still cries? What part of you believes it is unworthy of love? These are not casual questions. They are sacred. They are the keys to the inner chamber, the place where your soul waits for you to return. And when you do return, when you meet yourself with honesty, with grief, with forgiveness, the addiction begins to loosen. Not because you fought it, but because you listened to what it was trying to protect. The psyche heals through contact, conscious contact with the contents of the unconscious. That is the way. And so I leave you for now with this truth. You do not have to fear your darkness, you only have to meet it. And when you do, when you greet your shadow as a teacher and not a monster, you will find that the addiction was not a curse. It was a calling. You have listened, perhaps with trembling, perhaps with quiet recognition. You have begun to understand that the answer to addiction is not found in resisting the compulsion with brute force, but in entering into the sacred dialogue with the self, the true self, the one who has been waiting patiently beneath the chaos of behavior and the rituals of avoidance. Now I must take you deeper still. Because once the shadow has been faced, once the inner child has been heard, the grief named, the protector understood, there comes a silence. And in that silence, a new figure arises from the unconscious. It is not your old identity. It is not the mask you wore. It is not your trauma. It is what I have long called the self, the center of the total personality, both conscious and unconscious, the divine image within. Many have misunderstood me here. They say, Dr. Jung, are you speaking of God? Yes, but not a God in robes and thunder. I speak of the God image that lives within the psyche. The self is not your ego ideal. It is not your fantasy of perfection. It is the wholeness of your being, even the parts you disown, even the pain you've tried to bury, even the weakness you call failure. All of it, integrated, alive. And it is this self, this numinous presence, that has been trying to reach you through the symptom of addiction. You must understand this. The self does not speak in the language of commands. It speaks in symbols. And when symbols are denied, they become symptoms. Addiction is a symbol of separation, a sign that something vital has been cut off, exiled, pushed into the darkness. Do not waste your time merely asking, how can I stop? Instead ask, what part of my soul have I abandoned? You see, we speak of addicts as if they are somehow less than. But I tell you, addicts are often those with the greatest sensitivity, the deepest emotional range, the most powerful connection to archetypal energy. That is precisely why they suffer. Their unconscious is vast and loud, and yet they live in a world that offers them no map, no ritual, no mirror. But now you know the truth. The mirror is within. The map is the dream. The ritual is the act of turning inward. You must become a participant in your own healing. You cannot be rescued from without. You must descend into yourself. The gods once lived on Mount Olympus, but now they live in the unconscious, waiting for your recognition. Take the example of the wounded healer, an archetype older than civilization. This is not merely metaphor. The wounded healer is a pattern in the human soul. The one who suffers becomes the one who guides. But only if they do not run from the wound. Only if they enter it, learn from it, and offer its lesson to others. I have said it many times. You are not what has happened to you. You are what you choose to become. And that choice begins the moment you realize the addiction was not a detour. It was part of the road. Ah, how the ego despises this. The ego wants to believe it can control everything, shape everything, triumph through effort alone. But the self does not demand control. It demands surrender to truth. It does not ask for perfection. It asks for honesty. So let me ask you, as plainly as I can, what truth do you fear most? That you were hurt? That you are angry? That you need love? That you are terrified of being truly seen? Bring that truth into the light. Look it in the eyes. Name it. For what is named becomes integrated. And what is integrated loses its power to destroy. You do not need to be perfect to be whole. You only need to be real. This is where many people falter. They believe that healing means becoming pure, becoming strong, becoming someone who never makes mistakes again. But this is the lie of the ego. The self is not pure. The self is complete. And to be complete is to be human. Messy, complex, scarred and sacred. You ask me, then what replaces the addiction? I tell you now with gravity, meaning. Meaning replaces addiction, not duty, not willpower, not even happiness. Meaning, what gives your suffering shape? What makes your story a myth, not just a tragedy? What task, what calling, what act of service arises from your pain? Until the psyche has meaning, it will create compulsion. Because the soul cannot live on emptiness, and in the absence of meaning, addiction becomes a substitute for initiation. So find what matters. And I do not mean what is fashionable. I mean what burns in you, quietly or fiercely. A cause, a craft, a prayer, a poem, a relationship, something that says to your soul, this is why you are here. The addiction will not disappear in an instant. The old patterns will beckon, the pain will whisper, but you are no longer unconscious. You now know who is speaking. And when the voice of addiction calls, you will answer it not with obedience, but with dialogue. You will say, I know what you want, but I will find it another way. This is maturity. This is power. Not to suppress the inner world, but to live in relationship with it. I tell you, addiction is not your final identity. It is your chrysalis. And you, yes, even you are capable of transformation. But you must choose to awaken. The self has always been calling. You have heard me speak of shadow and self, of wounds and symbols, of descent and the possibility of return. And now we must speak of what lies beyond the fire, of what life might become after the compulsion fades, after the drink is set down, after the body no longer trembles from withdrawal. For that moment comes, yes, it does. But what will you do with it? You see, many fear that without the addiction, they will become nothing. They ask, who am I if I am not this pattern, this pain, this endless craving? It is a terrifying question, and it is also the threshold of rebirth. Because what they are really asking is, can I live without this identity I have wrapped myself in? And I say to them, and now to you, yes, you can. But the self that emerges will not be the same self that entered the fire. You will not return to who you were. You cannot. The old self was too small. It was constructed to survive, not to flourish. But the new self, the integrated self, has room for truth, for beauty, for power, for vulnerability, for contradiction. This is the meaning of individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole. And this wholeness is not abstract. It is lived. It is how you speak to yourself in the quiet moments, how you sit with emptiness without rushing to fill it, how you hold grief in one hand and gratitude in the other, how you say, I don't know, without shame, and how you walk through life not as a wound but as a witness. There will be days when the old patterns whisper. That is to be expected. The unconscious never forgets, but now you are conscious. Now you know the voice when it calls. You no longer confuse the wound for identity. You recognize the ghost and say, I remember you, but I no longer need you to survive. This is healing, not erasure, but relationship. You will begin to dream differently. The symbols will shift. Where once you saw monsters, now you may see guides. Where once you drowned, now you walk the shoreline. Dreams are mirrors. And as your inner life transforms, so too do the reflections you receive. And then, quietly, something remarkable happens. You begin to sense calling, not in the grandiose sense. Not necessarily to become a prophet or a healer, although perhaps in your own way you are both. But you are called to embody meaning, to live in alignment with the truths you have uncovered, to live with depth, with kindness, with courage. Do not keep your healing to yourself. The one who has walked through addiction and emerged into consciousness holds a rare medicine, not perfection, but understanding. You know what it means to lose yourself. And now you know what it means to find yourself again, not as you were, but as you are becoming. You will see others still bound in the cycle, still unconscious, still reaching for the bottle, the needle, the ritual. Do not judge them. They are you from another time. Offer your presence, not your superiority. Offer your truth, not your doctrine. Be the mirror you once needed. We do not heal in isolation. We heal in relationship to self, to symbol, to others. When you share your story, you invite another into their own. When you speak without shame, you silence the tyranny of secrecy. And when you love yourself as you are, you teach others it is possible. Now I must say something that may surprise you. The self, the great archetype of wholeness, does not care whether you are perfect. It does not care whether you never relapse, whether you meditate every day, whether you always say the right words. The self cares that you are awake. that you are honest, that you are listening to your dreams, to your body, to the symbols that arise each day in the small and ordinary moments, a conversation, a tear, a bird outside the window. These are not meaningless. They are messages. Life is always speaking. The question is, will you hear it? When you do, when you live from that place of inner listening, you become a different kind of being, not controlled by fear, not driven by shame, but animated by meaning. You may not realize this now, but the journey you have taken from compulsion to consciousness is the hero's journey. Yes, yours. You descended into your own underworld. You faced the dragon. You learned its name. And you returned, not as a savior, but as one who knows the truth. The truth is simple, and it is sacred. You are not broken. You are becoming. And everything you thought was failure was really initiation. Addiction was not your ending. It was the dark womb of your beginning. So go now live from that knowing. Dream from it. Create from it. Forgive from it. And when the shadow returns, as it will do, not panic. You now know its language. You now know your own. And that is freedom.